Bizarre Brain Comics. Hello, my comic book friends, and welcome to Bizarre Brain Comics. I am Gary, your host. This is where I like to take a look at some older comics, talk a little bit about the characters and creators, and examine the stories and the art. Well, this one we're going to look at today isn't that old, but the contents are almost as old as me. Okay, we want to take a look at My Favorite Martian. Are you familiar with My Favorite Martian? This was a free comic book day comic from 2012, and it was produced by Hermes Press as part of publicity for the publication of Volume 1 of the hardback My Favorite Martian reprint volume. And for those of you who just might not be familiar with My Favorite Martian, okay, it was an American sitcom airing on CBS for 107 episodes from 1963 to 1966. And this was at the time when other fantasy type sitcoms were coming out. They were all part of a little wave, like had My Favorite Martian, Bewitched, and I Dream of Jeannie. They're all somewhat similar in concept. And the show starred Ray Walston as Uncle Martin, who is the Martian, and a very young Bill Bixby as Tim O'Hara, who was pretending to be a regular normal. He was a regular normal human Earth person, pretending to be Uncle Martin's nephew. Okay, and the premise was that there's this Martian. He crash lands on Earth, and then he winds up having to stay with Tim and having to hide his identity from others while trying to repair his ship so he can get back to Mars. See, and the original comic version was published by Gold Key Comics. So, and this is a lot of fun. I never got any of these comics, and at the time I was too young then, and I don't really remember watching the show when it first aired. I may well have, because I would have been 4 or 5 years old at that time. But years later, I watched a lot of and I loved the reruns several years later. And the show was a lot of fun. Not really very scientifically minded and stuff, and they involved a lot of things, sometimes with the space program, because remember, at this time NASA and the space race was fairly new, and at the time of this the show's production was during the period of the Mercury and Gemini programs, while they were working up to the Apollo program to get to the moon. And part of that became part of the plots, sometimes some of the plots in the show. So, and I wanted to tell you, Ray Walston, he did a fine job as Uncle Martin. And but unfortunately, like it happened with so many actors, and it's entirely the fault of the producers, not the audiences. He got typecast as Uncle Martin, and it was very difficult for him to find work after that, up until in the what was it, 79, 80, somewhere, when he played Mr. Hand in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which gave him a second lease on life in his career. He also made an appearance in the many years later, the very poorly written, unfortunate movie version of My Favorite Martian. But he did not play Martin. That in that movie, it was all of a sudden I can't think of his name. You know him. Played Krug in Search for Spock. Um, the Doc Brown in Back to the Future movies. He played Uncle Martin, and and Ray Walston played another Martian, but you don't find that out until the end. He just looks like he's looking for Uncle Martin. Okay, and but in more recent decades, he is probably most closely identified with his recurring role on Star Trek, the Star Trek series, different series, as Boothby, the the groundskeeper at Starfleet Academy, who had been a big influence on of several of the officers appearing later, showing up in various Star Trek series. And I think that was always fun, and he did a great job at that. And of course, he also played Pappy in the show in the movie Robin Williams movie of Popeye. Yeah, he played Popeye's Pap. So, so that is just a little bit, and of course we all know Bill Bixby. After My Favorite Martian, he has Courtship of Eddie's Father, the Magician, the Incredible Hulk, and Good Morning Beantown, as well as various guest spots on various TV shows, TV movies, and I think even a few theatrical films. So they both had long and successful careers, and they both did an amazing job. So, shall we take a look inside? There's great cover painting here. This is a great cover. Of course, the painting was not done for a cover. It was a publicity piece for the show. And here we can see on the back cover has a photo of Ray Walston as Uncle Martin, and of course, he had a Martian, and he had powers. He even had antennae that come up out of his head, etc. And he had various powers. So let's take a look, shall we? Inside the pages of My Favorite Martian. Oh yes, unfortunately I don't know who wrote it, but this was drawn by the great Dan Spiegel, that did so many great things. Of course, there's another photo thing, and it's My Favorite Martian, Destination Mars. Uncle Martin working in his apartment. Tim's at work. Tim happens to be a newspaper reporter, and he's trying to concoct an appropriate fuel for his spaceship. And he goes downstairs while it's cooking on the oven. He goes downstairs, and he's to the garage where his spaceship is, where he's been working on it. And their landlady's daughter, Angela, sees him. She has to go up for something to his to the apartment. And meanwhile, she sees the stuff on the stove. She thinks it's some kind of soup. It tastes terrible, so she puts all kinds of other stuff in it, trying to make it better. Uncle Martin goes up and gets the stuff, puts it in the spaceship, and kablooey! It kind of blows up, kind of wrecking the garage door, kind of wrecking the spaceship, and almost wrecking Martin himself. They have to fix the door, yada yada yada. So now what am I going to do? All that time I've spent fixing my ship, and now I got to start all over again and find out what happened. He later does find out that the fuel wasn't. She had ruined the fuel. Then they see in the paper a thing about an upcoming Mars probe launch, as a robotic space probe, and it just so happens that Tim gets the assignment from his paper, so they go there, and they to the rocket base, to the base where it's going to be launched, because this is going to be a robot controlled probe. Now this makes no sense, really. That they're going to have a humanoid type robot inside the spaceship to control the spaceship to land on Mars and get the samples and come back, rather than just building the probe without the robot part, just having it designed so it can do all the stuff, like as what later actually happened. Okay, so he says he wants to says, "I wants to volunteer to go instead of the robot." And I said, "Well, our what they call him? Dan, Dino Automated Navigator. Dan, that's what they call the robot." And it says he's superior, and they're running some tests on him. So they have Uncle Martin and the robot do tests. Well, Uncle Martin is better than the robot at this stuff, but said, "You're so good, we can't afford to use you. We're going to send Dan anyway." And so Martin's disgusted. He just turns invisible and slips out, leaving Tim there all by himself. And they get up, and so they're getting ready. They're going to launch the thing, and and of course Dan Spiegel, he did a great job at the images of the actors, the whole setup, everything is. The apartment, the car, everything looks great, and even the rocket, even though it's a fictitious type rocket, you can clearly tell that it is based on at least superficially based on some of the existing rockets at the time. And even look here, look at the gantry and all this other stuff. It looks so authentic. He worked closely from photo reference for this stuff. So the rocket is launched, but it turns out Uncle Martin is inside the robot. He had slipped in, took all the innards out of the robot, slipped inside the robot's suit, got it, and so he could go to Mars. So he said, "Well, here I'll just do all the stuff that the robot is supposed to do." Then he tries to get out, and the door is sealed. He cannot open the door. Oh my gosh, what's he going to do? Then he's there, and the thing takes off again, and it comes back to Earth. When he gets here, he turns. It has a splashdown. It's recovering, and then they get the robot out, and Uncle Martin had become invisible, slipped out of the robot, out of the spaceship, and they're surprised that there's nothing inside the robot. All the innards are gone. So then there is Uncle Martin, Tim, back and said, "Wait a minute, no, well." It was so close. I actually got to Mars, but I couldn't get up. And of course, it's got little sight gags and verbal gags and stuff all throughout. And it's a real fun read, and some more stills from the show, especially Uncle Martin himself. And then that's for some of the other reprints of like Dark Shadows. I didn't know Gold Key had produced so many Dark Shadows, enough for it to have 5 reprint volumes. I would love to get those. That has some single page gags for of my favorite Martian, etc. And stuff like that. But the whole thing is advertising. And I'm glad I got it. It was a lot of fun to read, and if you get a chance to watch the show, read any of the comics, I suggest you do so, because it is a lot of fun. And I wish I would love to have a reprint volume of some of these shows. So I want to thank you for joining me. Please like, share, subscribe. Do leave your comments down below. Tell me, are you a fan of my favorite Martian? Either the comic book or the TV show, or even the movie. Let me know in the comments below. And remember, comics are art.